Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Ad Hoc Committee on Comprehensive Job Creation Plan. My name is Paul Krikorian, Chair of the committee, and I'm joined by my colleagues, Mr. Harris-Dawson and Mr. Blumenfield, and we're ready to begin today's meeting. The first item that I'd like to take up is general public comment. Is there anyone who's submitted a card for general public comment? Yes. All right, seeing none, general public comment is closed. That brings us to item number one.
Item number one, Mr. Chair, CAO, EWDD, and CLA to report relative to the citywide economic development strategy and 5-year plan.
So, members, I've spoken to the CLA on this matter, and there are some additional steps that need to be taken to complete the report on this item. So I'd like to hold this one on the desk, hold it in committee until our next meeting, which is scheduled for February 13th. And Mr. Wickham, I understand that at that time you'll be able to present a report on the study that has already been completed. So this has been a long process to get us to this point. That's not the fault in any way of the CLA, who has really just received this material to be commenting upon. Sometimes these consultant reports, for some reason that mystifies me, always seem to take far, far longer than expected, and this was such a case. But I'm looking forward to having a full and complete report about it and a robust discussion about it at our February 13th meeting. So item number one will continue until February 13th. That brings up item number two.
Item number two, Mr. Chair, motion Krikorian Harris-Dawson relative to instruction to the CLA with assistance of the City Attorney, CAO, Chief Procurement Officer, and Information Technology Agency to review the Los Angeles Business Council Institute's Small Business Feasibility Study and report within 90 days with an analysis.
All right. We have a number of cards on this matter, so before we get into the presentation, I'd like to invite up our public speakers, and each will have 1 minute to speak on this item. We'll start with Linda Clark, followed by Jennifer Ito, followed by Mark Morales. Yes, just come on up. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Linda Clark, and I'm part owner of Continental Colorcraft and majority owner of Cobalt C Creative, the design division of Continental Colorcraft. We've been in business for over 50 years and specialize in printing and custom packaging. We also happen to be a union shop. I'm here today to share why I support the development of this online clearinghouse. Continental Colorcraft is considered medium-sized in terms of a business. We have 42 employees, whereas Cobalt C Creative, which is the certified business enterprise, with about 8 employees. We have the workforce, the ability, and the competitive pricing to deliver large-scale printing and packaging services, as well as design and marketing services. But the one-time nature of events, the large events that come into town like the Super Bowl or the All-Star Game, often means that the contracts tend to go to national vendors instead of the regional ones like ours. It simply takes a lot of time and effort for the organizers of the different events to figure out, assess, and engage with local suppliers. We also have difficulty advertising our status as a woman business enterprise and haven't felt like that it's boosted our business that much. But with this new program, contract opportunities could be posted in one place, saving buyers and suppliers time and money and giving the buyers confidence in that they need to know that the local businesses can develop a quality product.
All right.
And on time. And we happen to be just east of here, like 10 minutes drive. The program would also help us
You'll need to wrap up because I have to give
connect
everyone
with buyers looking for a Weeby supplier. And we need this program in LA so that small, medium-sized businesses and union businesses like mine can expand to get to the next level of success.
Great. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Jennifer Ito, followed by Mark Morales, followed by Shoneji Robeson.
Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Ito, and I'm the Research Director with the USC Program for Environmental and Regional Equity. And like our name would suggest, we're interested in issues of regional equity and economic inclusion. And so I'm here just on behalf of our organization to express our partnership and the pleasure that we have of partnering with LABC Institute on this initiative. We're particularly interested in how we can think about how the procurement and the contracting for all the goods, services of these string of major events can really be a driver for not only economic growth in the region, but for inclusive growth. And so our contribution to this project is going to be bringing some data and analysis, countywide and census tract level analysis, to try and identify how can we really capture some of the economic opportunities from this, but also make sure that it's tied to business owners and economic opportunity for historically disenfranchised communities, such as women-owned small business and minority-owned businesses. So thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mark Morales, followed by Shoneji Robeson, followed by Sky Kelly. Good afternoon.
I'm Mark Morales, and I'm President Emeritus of the Los Angeles Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce. I'm the local representative for the National LGBT Chamber of Commerce. There are 1.4 million SBA. The SBA says there's 1.4 million LGBT-owned businesses in the U.S., and the Los Angeles region houses 15% of those certified LGBT businesses. The biggest challenge to LGBT-owned businesses is finding the opportunities that these large projects before they actually go to someone else. And a centralized procurement platform for us to be able to find those opportunities is the reason why we're here and why we support and why we've been working with LA Business Council to create this program.
Right. Thank you very much. So if I could ask our next speakers to come up, Ms. Robeson and Sky Kelly, please. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Good. How are you?
My name is Shoneji Robinson. I am co-owner of Southern Girl Desserts, which is located inside the Baldwin Hills Mall. Hello there. We started this business almost 13 years ago, and we have worked effortlessly to build an amazing brand that the local community recognizes. We are in full support of a project like this because this would give us an opportunity for our name to be placed in the hat for larger companies to be able to utilize our services. Some of the larger events like the Super Bowl or Olympics or things like that. So it pretty much helps to level the playing field for small businesses so that we have the same opportunities as some of these larger companies that have maybe a more recognizable name. So we definitely support, and we are asking that you guys give this an opportunity to move forward.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kelly, good afternoon.
Yes. Hello, my name is Sky Kelly. I'm the founder and CEO of Avisar, which is a tech startup that started here out of the LA Clean Tech Incubator, and our whole purpose and mission is to help small businesses effectively compete for contracts. We've developed a solution that now also includes certifying small businesses as well, which we just launched with the City of Los Angeles and Michael O, the Chief Procurement Officer, to help small, minority, women, veteran, LGBT-owned businesses get the much-needed government contracting that can really help grow their business. We're in full support of a regional marketplace. We've studied this for years, and we know all the problems that small businesses face, but we also understand the problems that government agencies face and that people face on the buying side as well. And we know that access to a regional marketplace is important. It's one very key component, but procurement reform is also a key component. And we want to help continue the great work that Michael O, the Chief Procurement Officer, is doing with the procurement reform for LA.
Great. Thank you very much. Do we have any other speakers on this matter? I don't see any. So we'll go ahead and close public comment on that matter. Members, I'm so pleased that we had the public speakers that we did to kind of set this issue up because all of us who've worked on trying to develop more local procurement that advantages our local businesses have been frustrated by the hit and miss process by which we've been able to do that. And An example is our local preference ordinance, which we enacted some numbers of years ago, and has never been as effective as it might have been, in part just because nobody knew about it. And you almost had to be one of the in-the-know people to know about that program in order to take advantage of it, which defeats the entire purpose. And so I want to thank the Los Angeles Business Council for bringing this concept to us, because it was seemed to me an exciting opportunity to emulate what has worked elsewhere in order to broaden our pool of potential businesses who can benefit from the enormous amount of economic activity and procurement that we're going to have, not just public procurement, but private procurement in relation to the big events that we have coming up, and will allow more businesses to know about those opportunities, to compete effectively for those opportunities, and to not be buried by the red tape that's usually involved in the procurement process. So I'm hopeful that we can follow along with London's lead and others' lead and have such a system here in Los Angeles. So with that, I'd like to invite up, on behalf of LABC, Mary Leslie, the president of LABC, Brad Cox as well, and Bob Graziano. And who would like to start?
I'm going to start off. Good afternoon,
Cox.
council members. Thank you for being here, fellow staff. It's a pleasure. I'm Brad Cox. I'm the chairman of the Los Angeles Business Council Institute. It's a pleasure to be here today to really submit this program for your review. We believe it's going to be a huge win for Los Angeles. The presentation you'll receive today and the corresponding research has been a tremendous project for us. It's been a lot of work over the last couple of years. Just to give you a perspective, our Leadership Council, we've had over 40 stakeholder meetings to assimilate our background research data, the information, testimonials, and feedback from multiple constituents in both the public and the private sectors to help guide the recommendations that you'll see today. Our recommendations, we think, address a very important gap in the procurement process, which is the need to engage the small businesses that drive our Los Angeles economy. We know that's been an important issue for Councilman Krikorian and the associate council members on this committee, and we believe that you've really jump-started that by hiring obviously the city's first ever chief procurement officer. Michael's been involved in the process, has brought great input to the process. He's really a great talent. Mary's going to really highlight our research and what we've learned from this program, and Bob Graziano, who is a LABC board member and the chairman of the Los Angeles Sports and Entertainment Commission, is going to share his thoughts on how he thinks this will work for some of the major sports programs and activities that are going on here in Los Angeles. So it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for listening. We're very proud of the research that we've done. So,
thank you.
Thank
Leslie,
you.
good afternoon.
Thank you, Brad. And good afternoon, council members, and our council chair, Paul Krikorian. Your work, and when we brought this to you a year ago, you were very open and said, come back in a year when you're done. So I feel like we did what you said. We're back here. It's been a year, but we visited with several other of the council members as well, so they're familiar. But now I'm going to talk a little bit about LABC's sort of commitment to social equity and economic development in LA. We think it's a rich tradition the last 10 or 15 years. We've tried to do it in a lot of what we do, whether it's energy or housing. So now we're going to talk about small business. And this is really on the shoulders of the work that Michael O. and Sky and Michael Kelly have done, because we would never be here today without them, and we think this really complements the work that they've done. So with that, I'd like to talk about what we see. We think in the next few years we're really poised here in LA to benefit from some of these world-class activities we're going to have in sports, entertainment, and cultural events. Ranging from the All-Star Game, the Super Bowl, the World Cup, the Grammys. These are all events that will bring in new capital and investment, more tourism, and put LA squarely in the spotlight and the world stage. We want to make sure that when these events come, that everybody benefits, that it's not just a small group of people, but that's just something that's felt citywide, and that businesses, particularly small and disadvantaged businesses, can access into these opportunities. We see at a minimum about $5 billion just from these sorts of activities occurring over the next 7 years. And we think we need to build our capacity to meet the opportunity that they present. And not just for this, but for many of the municipal opportunities we have as well. As you know, the city, county, and proprietary agencies like LAW have all set ambitious goals for utilizing underserved businesses. And we want to create a tool to help meet these goals more easily. As you know, LA County has close to 250,000 women and minority-owned businesses, more than any other in the nation. 97% of those small businesses have less than 50 employees. So they really are the backbone of our economy here in LA. But these small businesses are at a clear disadvantage in that, according to our research, and you have it, I hope, with you in your briefing book, this Committe for LA Small Business Procurement Feasibility Study is a compilation of all the work we did with the key recommendations and with some key survey information. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what businesses said. Basically, businesses have identified a whole web of procurement challenges, many of which are not new to you, but we'll talk about briefly. We think these challenges run the gamut. Without a comprehensive database of contractors, suppliers, and small businesses, they struggle to learn about new contracts. They tend to have difficulty navigating bureaucratic barriers, even though we're trying to reduce those, and they're not always aware of contracts. Buyers also struggle to find small businesses to fill their subcontracts. With few tools available to help them reach their businesses, many just try and then give up. This is the particular case for sporting and cultural events because these are temporary in nature. So, when asked what could be done to make it easier for all of the businesses to benefit from these events, there was unanimous answers from both buyers and from suppliers. All of the businesses we surveyed said they wanted a clearinghouse or a one-stop linking of buyers and suppliers in an open, transparent, and free system. And I'd like to repeat the notion of open, transparent, and free because we are suggesting a partnership between the public and private sectors. So how would a program for LA work? Fortunately, we're not starting from scratch. A program called Committe for was developed and used in the run-up to the London Games in 2012 and provides us with a proven model of success. Committe for has been hands down an incredible success in the UK. Leading up to the Games, more than 13,000 contracts were awarded and advertised on Committe for, with 75% of those contracts being awarded to small businesses. 65,000 people were employed during the Games, by the way, that had been unemployed were hired during this period. And Committe for allowed local businesses to take advantage of the massive surge in investments from the Games. But it also resulted in a long-lasting and sustainable positive impact. Since the close of the Games, the program has lived on as a legacy item for the UK. It now has roughly 250,000 small businesses on it. And has over 400 new users that register every month on it. Its use has expanded in both the public and private sectors, linking buyers and suppliers. It handled one of the largest UK infrastructure, over $78 billion in the UK, a major infrastructure project, the biggest in Europe right now. It also was responsible for the London's Metropolitan Police Headquarters and the Thames Tideway Tunnel and the HS2 high-speed rail, all the things that hopefully when you're at London you have taken advantage of. So how is this replicable for LA? These are the key components we think that the London system makes sense. We think aggregating contract opportunities in one place through a public-private partnership is key, eliminating red tape and repetitiveness. We think the benefits are to qualified suppliers is that they'll be alerted to new supply chain opportunities. We think that the buyers will be shown carefully vetted supplier lists. We think that this system actually created accountability, something that we have lacked in the past, with automated reporting and compliance features. It provides tangible evidence of the economic development and community benefits. When you combine this online clearinghouse with effective market analysis, which is a whole nother issue that we're talking to USC about, and a robust outreach team, and a willingness of prime contractors to opt in, which is another issue, we predict that this model will have tremendous success in LA. This is not a suggested replacement for any existing city, county, or metro proprietary procurement systems. It's rather a digital interface or clearinghouse to help a growing municipal market. So what are the outcomes and opportunities in this? We think that more contracts being won by local businesses, especially our small businesses, the economic ripple will actually make its way down into the neighborhoods. Over the long term, we know we're going to keep attracting large-scale events. Last year, we hit record numbers for tourism. The number of conventions and corporate meetings we host will continue to rise. We've got hundreds of billions of dollars slated for public, transit, housing, and other development projects. All of this means that more possibilities for this program and more wealth creation opportunities for local businesses in LA. So we want our local businesses to succeed and our public agencies to meet their business inclusion goals. This program and platform could help provide the tools we need to get there. So thank you. And I'd like to take a moment to thank, we had a really large group of diverse stakeholders that are involved in this program over the last year, and I think, you know, we can always learn more from others, but that this group did us a real favor, and we're very grateful to them. So with that, I'd like to introduce a member of our Leadership Council and Chair of the LA Sports and Entertainment Commission, Bob Graziano.
Thanks, Mary. Good afternoon. It's really a privilege to be here today. Throughout my career in Los Angeles, I've helped attract and stage many major events in Los Angeles, and therefore I've seen firsthand the benefit that it can have to the community. And whether it was my time working for the 1984 Olympics, or my time working with the Dodgers, or my role as past chair of the LA 84 Foundation and current board member of the LA 84 Foundation, or as chair of the LA Sports and Entertainment Commission. So when you look at the next 10 years in Los Angeles, we're poised to host the Breeders' Cup this year, the NCAA West Region Tournament in 2020, Major League Baseball's All-Star Game in 2020, the Super Bowl in 2022, the College Football Championship in 2023, the U.S. Open in 2023, the World Cup in 2026, and of course something you guys have all been close to, the Olympics in 2028. And I'm proud and confident to say that we can all work together to create a lasting impact on the greater Los Angeles community. The events really do have the potential to deliver a powerful stimulus to this community, but that's not a given. We really have to work at that. And at the LA Sports and Entertainment Commission, we've really bid on these events with a sense of responsibility to the community and the well-being of this city, with the understanding that these events are going to put this city in the national spotlight. And as part of the legacy of the events that I've just described, we at the LA Sports and Entertainment Commission want to make sure the positive impact reaches everyone, especially small, minority, and women-owned businesses. And with the multiple world-class events in the pipeline, the regional program that Mary just described can help us improve the economic prospect of the underserved businesses, and more importantly, and this is a really important point for us, help us communicate our city's values to the world, because we really are going to be in the spotlight over the next 10 years. I've seen firsthand how important it is to involve the community when bringing the major events to Los Angeles like this, and this program's ability to tap into new markets for small businesses is a huge asset that I believe will only compound with continued use. And going back to why sports and entertainment is, I really do think, as you talked about before, the sports and entertainment world can give visibility to this procurement process, whereas many other events cannot. So we see a meaningful short and long-term benefits to the small and disadvantaged businesses with this program, just like the ones London has experienced since the implementation of Committe 4, and that's been going on for a while. There really is a tremendous amount of work to be done over the next 10 years in terms of hosting the events that I just described. it's going to require a substantial amount of support. And our ability at the LA Sports and Entertainment Commission to garner that support will be greatly enhanced if the people supporting it know that it will benefit the underserved in our community by strengthening small, minority, and women-owned businesses and creating additional jobs for those businesses. Therefore, I wholeheartedly support this program and hope you will as well, and really appreciate it and thank you for your time.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that presentation. And Mr. Graziano, you hit on a point that was on my mind as I listened to the presentation. We always just assume that these big events are going to have a tremendous impact on our local economy, and generally they will. But we also know that there are people that even come out in opposition to some of these events. Some of the folks who are opposed to our hosting the Olympics speak in terms of the benefit all going to the biggest businesses, the wealthiest part of Los Angeles, and gentrifying other folks and leaving folks out. And I think if we have a program that embraces every level of business, from the biggest to the mom and pop business on the corner, and show that we provide benefit to all of them, that helps us to garner greater support for future events as well, and it justifies our willingness to host them. So I think that's a key point. I just want to ask, I'm not sure who to address these questions to, so I'll just address them to all of you and see if we can drill down a little bit more on a couple of the key areas, and then I'd like to turn it over to my colleagues for questions. The first of the key challenges that you identified, Mary, was lack of awareness, and we see that again and again. As I said at the outset, with our local preference ordinance, it was a big shock to me and a learning opportunity for me when I had a meeting and we were talking about it, a public hearing like this, and we had representatives, the heads of many of the neighborhood and minority chambers of commerce in the room, and they hadn't even heard about the program. And I thought, shame on us that we have failed to be able to get the word out to the people who will most benefit from these programs. So what specifically is going to be done? What was done in London? What would you envision that we would be doing to ensure that the broadest possible scope of awareness is achieved for this kind of
that's a perfect segue to our UK specialists that are sitting right behind me.
Oh, okay.
That have flown in for 48 hours with us. I'd like to introduce Scott and Graham, and they're both Smiths. They're not brothers, and they're not related. But Scott or Graham, would you like to come explain why people understood that they should come to the Committe 4 platform? How did you do it?
Maybe we could pull up one more chair. You'll have to share microphones, I'm afraid, but you're all welcome.
And we must say they've spent a lot of airtime back and forth over the last year and a half here for multiple meetings.
Well, we're delighted to have you in Los Angeles. Hope you spend a lot of time. Hope you eat a lot of nice meals. Hope you buy some souvenirs before you go home from local small businesses, please. So, go right ahead.
Yes. So the program was the important part of the program. It was more than just technology. It was about people that were working on the ground to engage the local communities, both the buyers and suppliers, to put a face and make a living proposition of the portal itself. The technology, a lot of technology is out there. The idea that you have a team dedicated, you have commitment from leaders like yourselves to use the service and to promote the service across both the public sector and the private sector is how you get that usage. You build it through both the carrot and the stick of both the legislation, both the reporting requirements that are put on the Tier 1 contractors to report on their usage and their supply chain usage, and you provide the tools to make it easy for them to do that. So it's not just a forced position, something they have to do to the buying organizations, especially the private sector Tier 1s down the supply chain. You're providing services to them to help identify and award opportunities to small businesses for them to fill their contractual obligations. So that's how you're selling it to them, and they start to use it because they have nothing else to do it. They're doing it by hand, by spreadsheet, by word of mouth, and that's the whole proposition. It really is making it a win-win situation for everybody.
So you're kind of putting the onus on the larger contractors to utilize this to do outreach, because otherwise they're not going to be able to hit their goals easily.
That's right. So you've set up the local preference, you've set up the rules in the procurement, the original procurement, the prime procurement from the government to the businesses, usually the larger tier ones that win the big contracts, and then we're providing the tools, or we provide the tools and still do in London and the UK, for them to fulfill those obligations. Otherwise, they have to put small teams together, set up programs, set up their own systems, and they're very difficult and they're time consuming. And that we are able to build that infrastructure and then share that infrastructure not only across the different contractors and subcontractors in a particular project, but then across projects makes it a very effective proposition.
Okay.
But,
Yeah, go ahead.
Scott, describe the culture of the primes in the UK. What started to happen, that they become competitive among themselves, and describe that, because that would be a little bit different than how we view it here.
So originally, when we were brought in to build the system, and then we won a contract to actually execute it, we had 17 people on the ground working in the field with both the buyers and suppliers to open opportunities and then match those to suppliers. We thought the easy way out is they had a contractual obligation to do this. So we thought, well, this is pretty easy. We're just going to, say, you got a contractual obligation, tick, you go do that. It doesn't really work that way. That helped us get in the door. What we found was, we talked a minute ago about providing services that help them work better and more effective, but also we found that we were able to build league tables of the prime contractors and show how many opportunities they had published, how many they had awarded, and the value. And we did that somewhat accidentally as a filler during presentations. We put these league tables up on the screen like this, just sitting there. And then we had some of the heads of the big companies come to us and say, why aren't we number one on that? We're not going to be on the bottom of this table anymore. And it started kind of being a virtuous cycle of them starting to compete against each other to make sure they weren't at the bottom or they were near the top, something we really hadn't anticipated. So that kind of soft competitiveness to be seen to be the leader in that as a USP when they go to sell other things was more powerful, and it always has led us more successfully than the hard kind of stick of the contract.
So I guess somewhat related to that is, a challenge that we often have in public procurement is that smaller businesses sometimes take themselves out of the running because they think that they're too small to be able to handle a contract of the size that would be let. And I imagine the same sort of phenomenon happens with the Olympics and with other things where people think, well, I'm just a local neighborhood print shop. How could I do something for the Olympics? So how do we overcome that sort of barrier? I assume from what you're saying that also is a result of having the tier one contractors going out and searching it out and being able to actually do a more effective job of outreach to the smaller businesses. But what was the experience in London?
That's correct. And so that relationship that is initially established through the public procurement regulations and the laws about how you award those in open competition, we're talking about after that, we're talking about the tier one, the private sector body, then opening up their to tier twos and tier threes and open those up to competition, open those up to public notification. And that's the real difference. That's the nuance here. And we call them supply chain opportunities for it's not technically subcontracting, but subcontracting depends on where you are. So as they let down that supply chain, we're opening up those opportunities to competition, and they're getting down to a value and a scope that smaller businesses can actually fulfill. So then we're not asking a small company to take on or award a contract to a small company 3 or 4 or 5 times their total turnover. It's about a contract of the size and nature they can actually fulfill.
Yeah, this was described as like the yellow pages of businesses, which fortunately we're old enough to know what that is. I kept asking myself, do you know what the yellow pages are? I'm just kidding. They did. They knew what the yellow pages was because apparently still they get delivered still. But I think that's like an important nuance because you're not competing with what other people see as their stake in all this. This is sort of that level, right there where somebody's established, but they haven't gotten their first contract or they have one contract, so it's a small business under, what was the average, contract in the 13?
£100,000.
Yeah. So, that's what, about $125,000 contract. So we're talking about a lot of contracts, at a smaller level, not large contracts that.
And I think it's got to just touch on the onboarding process. The module is designed to really help those small businesses qualify.
Exactly.
And and get through the entire onboarding and requirement processes as part of the procurement process.
Exactly. So we ran think of a funnel. We had the awareness, which would tie into all of the different programs you guys fund and support, and are funded and supported by other private sector organizations. And then we actually had the facility to have them register, create a profile, and then they were able to respond to those opportunities that came up. The profile allowed them to then use that information that was about themselves to apply it to a particular opportunity, so they would be building a database of their responses. So it became easier and simpler for them to actually respond to opportunities.
What was the what were the funding sources for Compete 4, and how does is it self-funding or
originally it was funded by central government and the regional governments of Wales, Northern Ireland, Scotland. That's who did the seed funding originally, and then after 5 years it was pushed into a self-sustaining model through adding a range of value-added services. So we still run a core free service, and then we offer value-added services that help fund it. It's no longer funded by government at all. It's just celebrated its 10th anniversary last year. Yeah.
Terrific. Thank you. Mr. Blumenfield?
Just building on the funding question, and thank you all for being here, and this is a great, I'm excited by what I'm seeing and reading the report. But following up on the funding question, so it started out, the London model being funded by the central government. What's the ballpark figure in terms of what that cost and what a regional would cost here?
So
say what it costs, and then we'll say.
Yeah, it cost about £1 million to set up, 1.5, and that was in pounds. So, and then it was about £1 million a year to run the entire program for 5 years. Yeah.
So when we conducted the stakeholder meetings, particularly when we talked to primes, we asked them if it was something they would contribute to, because I do think the business organizations like myself, Michael Kelly, the Chamber, and many others will also have to be 100% behind this, and also marketing and advertising it, to your other point, Councilman Krikorian, about how you get the word out. If we all use our networks, that would also help. But that I think the private sector would be willing to help seed this and put up initial funding. And we had a very good presentation that we did with Michael O. and Sky with LISC. And a lot of the CDFI funders came up and started talking to us afterwards. And we had, in the course of all this, we spent time up at the county. And so we learned a lot about what the county is also trying to do and what Metro's trying to do. And so we have a kind of a sense now of what it looks like. And I think there's an appetite, and this price of $1.5 million or $2 million doesn't seem overwhelming, that we could do that, we could get it up and running. We could, and we could maintain it at $1 million a year. It initially was part of the OCOC for the 2012 Olympics. That's where it started in London. So, you know, that in a way was our initial naive thought, you know, but that now we're 2028, not 2024. See, Councilman's smiling. Now I think what the feedback we got is, no, you got to go now. Can't wait till 2028. You know, we've got needs now. So, you know, Bob just read off a list of, I don't know, 22 things that are about to occur in the next 3 or 4 years. So it's sort of like you just decide when you want to start. Yeah.
Yesterday. But so it doesn't, your vision is that it wouldn't actually cost any public funds up front.
Well, no, I think there should be public funds, because that's what I tried to emphasize. If you want it to be transparent, open, and free. And I think there's great merit to transparent, open, and free. So yeah. I think we should stick with transparent, open, and free.
I think it has to be for us to be.
I think to be creditable and also not be seen as proprietary. You know, because that's the other issue. You know, that if you decide to study this, is, you know, where would it land? And I think we feel pretty strongly after a year that it needs to land in the most neutral place where everybody can participate, you know, and that there is an ownership and it's not a privatized system or anything like that. It's, you know, it's really what it's intended to be. It's a public good. But it seems like, you know, we could use a landing pad regionally. We you know, most people don't view us as one city or another little city. You know, we're viewed as a region. You know, when Bob, you know, you've gone to Compete how many times now for Super Bowls, and, you know, people don't see it as, you know, one little city, right? They see it as a region. Yeah, and the other feedback we got from the primes was they struggle. You know, like, some people are very mature, like, and sophisticated. Like AG, in my opinion, is doing an amazing job. They seem to know exactly what they're doing. They know how to service the public side, and then on the private side, they sort of they set standards for themselves of 30%, and then they ask that of everyone who comes. That just becomes the norm. Satisfying that, I think they have a system for that, but most people don't. So every time we go to do like a Lucas Museum or you're basically starting from scratch. So what this would do is it would provide a place where people could go and where the information would start accumulating. And so whatever the issue was would go onto the platform, and then everybody would benefit. And even Metro, who seems to be way ahead in terms of getting to start from scratch 4 or 5 years ago and has a very professional operation at this point, would really kept saying to us, I think Teresa drew us they need a clearinghouse. They would welcome a clearinghouse. They would welcome a more robust pipeline. Everybody would welcome a more robust pipeline. And the private sector, I think, see it as valuable to them. Because...
And it'd be good I've been, when I was chairing the TCT, the committee that oversees the airport, and we would get some contracts back, and we would ask, where's the minority-owned business numbers, and they were never what they were supposed to be. And there was always lots of reasons for that. And we could only require that they go out and do more advertising and this and that. One advantage I see to something like this is you can now more definitively show what you've done. Well, I put it out on the system where, X number of small businesses have access and that kind of thing. So that's a very positive piece to it. So on the funding piece, you're recommending more of it. It does land with the city or government entities kicking in a certain percentage
initially
to get it off the ground, and then obviously there's got to, as it goes, if we're all feeding into it, that creates tremendous value as well, where you could monetize it either through extra services or even through advertising. I don't know that you'd want to, and I don't know how that gets. What the controls are on that, for things that the cities might not want. Has that been an issue in London, or?
It has, yeah. And so one thing we created was the ability to join as a partner.
Join what?
Join as a partner. Join the system as a partner, so you can help fund it, help support it, and you would have a page to promote yourself, promote what you're doing as a business, and so it's clear that that's a partnership and they're contributing to that. We also only took partners who would actually use it, so you had to be a user of the system to become a sponsor of the system, so to speak, and they paid for that. They paid to associate themselves to a service like this.
Right, but we never want to get to the place where someone's paying here and getting an advantage on our contracts by paying an outside service. But I think all that can all be handled. I notice most of the focus is on like Metro, LA City, kind of the big ones. But I would imagine there's equally, if you go to all the 88 cities and all the little nooks and crannies, how do you just assume that once the big ones are on board, the little ones are going to want to come running, or is there an active way to promote all of those other public entities into it?
Yeah, I'll use the term in the private sector, you have to go sell to them. And you have to sell to them. So you have to sell them the benefits of using the service. And that's the whole idea. You've got to understand the buyer's issues and their concerns and what they need, and then you start to satisfy those. So you make it a win-win situation and a no-brainer, and that's the idea.
So the way you're going to bring them on is just have a sales team out there.
Yes, constantly promoting it, constantly keeping it alive, and constantly making sure people are aware of it. It's critical.
The other issue was on the onboarding. I call it the Hogwarts hat. There's the system they use in the UK sorted people, so you knew you were assessed, and then if you were in need of greater technical assistance or financing, you were then referred. And I like that because I think this can also be viewed as a way to prepare people. And we've been in lengthy conversation. I'm a former SBA person, believe it or not, many years ago. I know. And I know Region 9 pretty well. And so Victor's still there. So we've had lengthy conversations. And they really need help because, quite frankly, some of their programs are really underserved. So they would be very excited by this because they have access to 13,000 banks and they have tons of financing. And you talk about programs not being understood or communicated. this would be an enhancement for them. Also, a lot of the people providing technical assistance. We received funding from JP Morgan Chase, and they have a program called Ascend, and the Ascend program is all about technical assistance, and we have UCLA and USC all providing that. So they all need to know where the market is. We were initially brought in on a grant because we were helping them identify a market for small businesses. So, I think the other feature this could have, what Michael's doing, Sky's doing, is that we need to tighten up the technical and financial assistance, the communications around that. And that's the other virtue of what I like what they did in the UK, because they did help mentor companies, and they did refer them, and they did get them in a pipeline, which is good.
So, correct. So what we did is you go in and fill your profile out, and depending on how you answered that, so you didn't have a health and safety policy or you didn't have an environmental policy, that triggered, based on your zip code, postcode in the UK, access to the local support in the area. So an email would automatically go out to that local support area and say, this company needs help with their environmental policy or creating one, and then they would have ability to contact them directly, which was quite a nuanced approach and really got that more real time than them having to step out of the system and go find the support elsewhere.
So what's the timeline like from the moment that, let's say, LA were to say, green light, go for this, we want to do it, to being up and running? How many other stakeholders do you have to get before it's a go, and are we big enough where if we say go, it's a go on its own?
Yeah, well, if you meant funding, once we have the funding, then yeah, you can get the system running in about 6 months.
And then as other ones come on, they reimburse us for the money we laid out, or they just add on?
Yeah, well, it depends on the model, but you could have seed funding, or then you could have that in portion of loans and have that paid back over time. The key here is you want to get it self-sustained at some point.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Harris-Dawson.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for keeping the pedal to the metal on these issues. It's a tough ship to turn around, but I feel like we're making progress, so I appreciate you. And I want to thank our friends at the LA Business Council for stepping up to lead. Mr. Blumenfield asked a lot of the questions that I had on this issue, but I wanted to talk to the folks from Great Britain, because one of the challenges we face in public sector procurement is we'll have a big contract and we'll say we want, ideally you'll do 10% women and minority subcontracting. And all the primes will come back to us and say, oh my gosh, we couldn't find anybody. We looked everywhere. Well, we actually, and this is LA, right? So,
Blinders.
Right, it's, you have to really find a particular place in the city not to be able to find women or minorities. But we almost never have a way of knowing what they mean when they say we looked everywhere. Yeah. And this would kind of give us that. And I'm wondering, what did the municipality or the Olympic Committee, did they put any requirements on? One, do you have such a thing there? Yeah. And then two, if so, did they put any requirements to say, you have to show us that you took these 5 steps to meet these requirements?
Yes, so the short answer is yes, they did. They actually made contractual requirements of not only reporting, but then to actually use the system. The Olympics was really quite broad. I think it said something where appropriate. You will publish opportunities. Any new opportunity arises, you will advertise it on the Compete For system. That kind of vague, statement worked, again, to get you in the door. And as you showed that you were there to help them find a value, to satisfy their needs, satisfy the requirements of reporting, finding quality suppliers of a certain demographic based on their contractual obligations, they were loving it because they didn't have a facility to do it. And they were, for lack of a better word, even to fake it took them more time and effort than actually do it through the system we created. So it was pretty straightforward to do that.
I just want to add, Councilman, that we jumped on this early because as a developer of doing a lot of P3s, I have the same challenge where we have MeBe-Weeby requirements, we have local hire requirements, and it was very frustrating to get competitive pricing because we couldn't find and meet those requirements oftentimes. So the subcontractor pool that we had out there that could meet those was very limited, and as a result, the cost of the projects just kept escalating. So when we first learned about this, we said, wow, this is an opportunity to onboard small businesses, to give them an opportunity to be highly competitive, to be able to bid on these projects with the major primes. So how do we get that platform in place to allow the small businesses in LA to help drive the economy, get engaged in it, and then ultimately hopefully drive competitive pricing when we go out for these bids for servicing the Olympics and all these other sports events. We have the primes here. We have a very large bidder profile and pool out there of qualified bidders that will hopefully give us a better competitive price for the services that we're going to deliver. So that's why we jumped onto this program early on. We saw it as an opportunity to help us respond to the small business challenges that they face on the onboarding process.
Thank you. Yes.
I was just going to say, and there was a little envy because when we looked around at these different Olympics, when we were back on that track, the $10 billion spend in the UK, over $2 billion, 2.2, 2.4 billion in US dollars went to small business. Well, that's great. I mean, we'd be thrilled to have that result. Yeah.
Excellent. So I saw the list of acknowledgments has an impressive set of people on it. And Ms. Kelly from Avasair came up and testified earlier. I'm just wondering, is it too early, or have you all thought about how those two programs could work together, might work together, or is that something you're going to get to in the near future?
I think the work they've done is exactly the correct work. This proposal is agnostic about software, hardware, anything. I think we have to be, because if this is a public-private entity, it'll be competed, and right, there's a standard we'd like to meet. I think that Sky would be quite competitive for that standard, and I think that it's going to be critical that Michael that this really fits in with his plans and your plans for procurement reform here. This is not meant to compete in any way. It's meant to enhance, and I think the excitement part is, and Keisha, who worked with us from DWP, I think the excitement part is capturing kind of that energy that comes from sports entertainment and culture.
Yes.
It's different,
it's different.
like people don't think, they want to be part of that. Like, I want to be part of, the Super Bowl, and, people who have never think of it. So that's why maybe you didn't have to spend so much time marketing the program in the UK. They came. If you build it, they will come. Right. That's the difference, because these events generate in a way that when we put out for pencils and pens and whatever, it's more of a slug to get people to do it. Yeah, so I think that's part of it.
Excellent. Thank you. That's kind of what I was thinking, but I wanted to hear it from you all. And then lastly, it's kind of building on some of the issues with the availability of information that the chairman raised. So there are the actual opportunities, but in the city of Los Angeles, in the county, at our utility, at our ports, we have an array, and I'm not going to sit here and try to say it's a logical array, but we have an array of assistance programs, right? And so I'll give an example. I'm not sure if it was you, Ms. Robinson, or your partner. We were at an event with the mayor, and one of you raised your hands. Was it you? And she was concerned, Mr. Krikorian, about the implementation of the new minimum wage. And she was like, I have this many people I'm going to have to reduce. And the mayor says, and I'm a member of the council, remember, by this point in history. And the mayor says, we have a program that can help you train your new employees so you can keep some of those people on while you do that. And I was like, oh my gosh. And you were like, oh my gosh. Who knew, right? So I'm just wondering, does this program have a way of helping people access those things in addition to just the actual opportunity?
Well, what you're doing is you're building a community of buyers, suppliers, people that want to be part of these
So like
things.
peer-to-peer.
So then you can start promoting every best that you have. Any policy you want to do through procurement, you can pass through that system, and you'd want to encourage people to come on and take advantage of that to be more competitive. Exactly.
So, Mr. Harris-Dawson, I had the exact same kind of experience when I was appointed chair of this ad hoc committee and didn't know the range of programs that we offer. And Anna Hovasapian took it upon herself to create a list of about, I don't know, 5 pages or so long of programs that assist businesses in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And through the creation of the small business portal, we have the ability to get that information out. That can tie into this. I think it's a great suggestion of a proactive way to use this kind of a system to push information out from the city that actually promotes the city as a business destination as well, and all of the programs that we have to make it a little easier to do business here.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, the big advantage to what you all are putting forward, I think, is that this is a way to popularize doing business in and with the city of Los Angeles, because everybody knows about the Olympics and everybody knows about the Super Bowl and all this. People might not know that, the light poles at DWP have to be repaired every so often, right? That's a higher level of interaction in the business world. But this I think really is exciting because it'll put us on the map and put us on the map in a very, very public way. So I thank you all and thank the chair.
All right, good. Anything else, Mr. Bloomfield? Terrific. Well, thank you all very much. The motion calls for the CLA with the assistance of the city attorney, the CAO, the chief procurement officer, and the Information Technology Agency to review the LABC Institute's small business feasibility study and report within 90 days with an analysis and assessment of benefits that can be achieved through development of regional procurement portal, the potential legal framework, and overall budgetary needs necessary to implement a regional procurement program. So that if there's no objection, that will be the instruction of the committee to the CLA. That will be the action of the committee to approve the motion and advance this forward. So thank you all very much for your presentation and all the work that you've put into this to chew it up for us so we can easily and quickly begin implementing this.
Well,
thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Is there any other business before the committee?
Mr. Chair.
Then we are adjourned.